Hello and welcome to International Relations in Focus. Bit of a special episode, this one. It's going to be a bit more freestyle because I'm on holiday or vacation in Warsaw, the capital of Poland, for just over a week. And the YouTube algorithm beast constantly needs to be fed. And so I thought I would use the opportunity to do a little experiment and see if I could film, edit and publish a full episode just using my phone. So the intent behind this video, I suppose it's a little bit of a travelogue in a sense, but it has a specific focus, again, on elements of kind of like military and strategic history, both past, but also looking at some of the present, because Warsaw, I say again, capital of Poland, and Poland is, in certain ways, and could conceivably be in literally ways, a frontline state in the current and potentially upcoming conflict with Russia. And so I think it's useful to get a perspective of Warsaw's past kind of like history and again strategic and military sense, given it's the capital of a country that has been swallowed up and crisscrossed by numerous empires over the centuries, but plucky Polish always seem to come bouncing back. And I think that's been quite clear on my travels so far, just how economically vibrant this place is. But there are still, as we'll see, the enduring marks of communist authoritarianism here. So as I say, it's I'll be filming stuff as I come across them. There's a loose structure, but overall it's going to be a bit more free-flowing. And again, I just hope you enjoy this little experiment that, you know, still maintains the essential remit of what we do here at Creation Core. So here we have the monument to the sappers, which was designed by a chap called Stanisław Kulon, and this was unveiled on May the 8th, 1975. It's about 17 meters high, and it's apparently designed to evoke a blast from a mine. And the monument basically is in memoriam of the sappers who died defusing all the mines and booby traps which were laid by the Germans and had to be dismantled in post-war Warsaw, or free Warsaw as they say. As you can see, it's quite a stark, I think the term is brutalist, 1970s kind of like communist design. So you've got the main central sapper here, and then you have kind of various murals, again all triumphantly socialistic and so forth. So apparently this plaque translates as "Free Warsaw will never forget those who, through their pain and blood, started work on her reconstruction." So a bit of a testament to the fallen there. And speaking of the fallen, there's also this plaque that, or series of plaques that names all those who sacrificed themselves during their clearance duties. You can see there in various ranks like SAP, and their names and so forth. So yeah, well, you know, whatever you think of the again the slightly brutalist communist architecture of this monument, you know, the accomplishments and the bravery of those who fell certainly can't be denied. So here we have Marshal Józef Piłsudski. Apologies if that pronunciation is a little off, but so he was the first Marshal of State in a newly independent Poland after it gained its freedom from the Russian Empire post World War I, and according to some histories became its dictator up to 1935. And is also regarded as the founder of, as was then, modern Polish armed forces. So, yeah, there he is. So here we are on a wet Sunday morning at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and members of the Polish military stand vigil at the tomb continuously, and the guard changes every day. But on Sundays at midday there's an especially ceremonial changing of the guard. So let's see what that looks like. So every week apparently there's a different military unit that stands guard, and on this occasion it's one of the mountain units, and you can tell that by the eagle feather that they each have on their helmet. So by me is the Warsaw Uprising Museum, and it commemorates the armed rebellion that took place beginning of 1st of August 1944, where the Polish Home Army underground resistance basically rose up just as the Red Army were approaching the gates of the city, in the hope that the Soviets would be able to liberate them and put the Germans on the back foot. Fortunately, it didn't quite pan out like that through pure cynical reasons. The Soviets maintained their halt on the other side of the Vistula River and basically allowed the Germans to pound the resistance for 2 months, resulting in official capitulation of the Home Army in Warsaw on the 2nd of October 1944, almost 2 months after fierce fighting, which wrecked a fair chunk of the city, and Hitler's vengeance afterwards was pretty diabolical. Most of the city was destroyed. From a pre-war population of 1.3 million, the population at the time of the uprising was 900,000, and after the fall of the uprising and the resultant destruction in the aftermath, there were only 1,000 civilians left in the city. So pretty comprehensive destruction, really. I think that's why it's actually so inspiring in a way, that even though it's taken decades, that Warsaw has well and truly risen from the ashes of that event. So let's go inside and see what we can see that commemorates that event and the heroic resistance that the Home Army and various civilians put up. So that was the Warsaw Uprising Museum. Pretty fascinating. exhibits. Quite moving, actually, to see the struggle that all those people went through to try and liberate themselves from tyranny, only to succumb to even more tyranny for decades to come under the Soviets. I thought I'd just put a highlights reel, not talk to it, because I think it was explanatory enough, and also I'd encourage people to come visit, see for themselves. You can spend a good few hours here. The one thing I would say, though, that I took away from it was the sheer destruction of the city. But what highlighted to me is that it may have been 80 years ago, which seems like a lot, but in many ways it's still within living memory of certainly some of the older people. But that you see images of the ruins of Warsaw after the uprising. And one needs to ask, how is it any different from what we saw in Mariupol in Ukraine in 2022? Or dozens of other settlements in the Donbass, and generally what the Russians are doing to eastern Ukraine and beyond. And even though we thought these kind of things were confined to the history books, they're happening right now, only a few hundred miles away from Warsaw. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that it could happen again if, God forbid, that kind of destruction moves westwards. So we've seen the impact that the Warsaw Uprising had. One of the consequences being, frankly, the flattening of most of Warsaw in its entirety. Yet some pre-war buildings still exist, if you know where to find them. And here's one such example. I think it's a school now. But you can see, like, these are the original bullet holes from the various battles that took place. So after I filmed that bit, come across this. This is the former Bank of Poland during the wartime. So there's an information plaque here, and this was basically a stronghold of the Warsaw Uprising. So that symbol there is a symbol of the uprising, and apparently they've left this building kind of like intact, really, as a ruin. It's almost like a monument. You can just see the shrapnel and bullet damage that was like sustained. But they've just left it completely preserved, I guess, in memoriam of the uprising. And then obviously there's a little sculpture there of the symbol. And taking into account what the surrounding area of what Warsaw looks like today, and then you have this contrast here, and it is obviously a piece of living history. So this is Warsaw's Old Town. The original was been around since 1300s, but like most of Warsaw, unfortunately, 85% or so, as we've seen, it got blown to bits by the Germans post failed Warsaw uprising. But in the years since then, they basically completely rebuilt it, virtually exactly how it used to be, to the extent that it was awarded a UNESCO World Heritage status. Because the Poles saw it as integral to their culture, their identity, their traditions, and they weren't going to let it stand. So behind me we have, fittingly, the memorial to the Polish underground and the Home Army, and it commemorates all their efforts from 1939 to 1945. Now, that memorial sits in a square in front of the Polish Parliament, building behind me. And moving on from more past military matters to current and indeed future ones, in late May, the Polish Parliament approved a measure called Shield East, which basically allotted 10 billion zloty. Now that's 2.5 billion US dollars, 2 billion British pounds, towards basically building a series of fortifications about 700 kilometers worth on the borders with Kaliningrad, the Russian exclave on the Baltic coast, and Belarus, which has effectively become a Russian satellite state now. Because the Poles are taking very seriously the prospect of war with Russia, or some form of conflict or incursion, what have you, in the next few years. So they're pretty serious about it. They, in terms of NATO members' expenditure, they're well on their way to reaching 4% of GDP towards defence, which, as a proportion of GDP, it would actually be higher than the US. Now, on the basis of that, the Poles, with some good reason, one could argue, are making the case that it should be them that take the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander spot in NATO High Command. Traditionally, it's been a Brit who's number 2 role to the Americans at number 1. Notwithstanding the fact that the current Conservative government in the UK have pledged another 75 billion or so worth of defence spending in the coming years. But let's be honest, they're going to be out of office in about 4 weeks or so from the time of this recording, and remains to be seen what the incoming Labour government will decide on defence spending. But back to Polish matters, they are very much taking their defence seriously. As we've seen throughout this little video I've made, they've been bitten many times before, especially by the Germans and the Russians subsequently to that during World War II, and they've lost their independence many a time, and they're certainly not up for being pushed around. That much is clear, regardless of which government. It was Law and Justice Party, more on the right, centre-right before that. Now Donald Tusk is back in power with a more kind of like left-leaning coalition. So regardless of the political persuasions of the Polish government, they take the Russian threat very seriously. So behind me is the Polish Museum of National History. That's still in work in progress and is not going to be open for another 2 years, 2026, so I'm told. In the meantime, however, this building has just opened, fresh out the oven. Polish, I suppose close translation is Museum of the History of the Army, military history in general. As I say, it's literally only been open for a few weeks, few months if that, and I'm told that they're still setting up certain exhibits, still moving in kind of artifacts and vehicles and so forth, but let's check it out and see what it's like. So, really good exhibit. Covered 1,000 years of Polish army / military history, from the earliest days of what could be recognised as the Kingdom of Poland, all the way to the end of World War II. Going through the battles against the Teutonic Knights, Duchy of Moscow, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Napoleon advancing into Central and Eastern Europe, and then incorporation into the Russian Empire, World War I, World War II. So great uniforms, great artifacts. To continue the baking analogy I used just before I went in, it does feel a little underdone, and I think that's more to do with they're still needing to set a few things up. Again, you could easily spend a good couple of hours in there, but I get the impression that it still needs maybe a few more months, another year worth of development in terms of setting up full exhibits, getting in all the kind of equipment and vehicles and what have you that they want to show. So definitely worth a visit, but maybe just let it settle for a bit longer. So behind me is the presidential palace where the Polish president resides, and with that I think we're going to kind of end X here. I think we've had a fair shake of the stick in terms of covering sites related to military history and current military endeavours in Warsaw and broader Poland. I mean, this video could be 2 to 3 times the length it is if I visited every single location, and I'm supposed to be on holiday as well. But it's been a pretty interesting experiment to basically do all of this on my phone rather than on my desktop for a change, and also to engage directly to the camera, ad-libbing without a script. I appreciate I'm not Peter Zeihan, but I like to think I've not done too bad a job. But indeed, please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you'd like to see more of these kind of videos in terms of exploring the the military histories of various cities and regions I end up visiting in the future. If you'd like to see kind of like more direct to camera, ad-libbing, discussing a range of modern geopolitical and geostrategic topics. Normal service resumes soon with various interviews on international relations in focus, and Zach and I are also thinking about what other military history documentary series to make after we've released the USS Slater documentary, which has been very well received. And with that, look, thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll speak to you soon.